sorry, the Outreach and Engagement Committee and the CTAC, about that. Very exciting to have a new mix of folks in the room. My name is Andrew Bunn. I'm the chair of the Community Transportation Advisory Committee. And I think it would be a valuable use of our time, since we have different people in the room, to go quickly around the table, have everybody just give their names, which board they're part of, and who they're representing. I see we have several people online as well, so we want to make sure that we're extra attentive to them so that their input can be heard. But we can start by going this way, and I think it would be great to hear the staff as well. So, if you want to start us.
Tim Lance, Plan RBA.
Kristen Hogg, Engagement Coordinator, Plan RBA.
Hi, I'm Martha Schickel with Plan RBA.
Hi, I'm Holly Gordon with Plan RBA.
Milton Hathaway, Public Outreach and Engagement Committee.
John Leonard, CTAC from VCU.
Richard Hankins, CTAC Partnership with Florida Drive. Jessica Schneider, I'm on the Public Outreach Engagement Committee, and I represent Chesterfield County.
Frank Petrosky, the Public Outreach Engagement Committee, and I chair the Chesterfield County Committee.
My name is Sarah Wisiger. I'm on CTAC and I represent the League of Women Voters.
I'm Gonzalo Ida on CTAC on behalf of Chesterfield County.
I'm Brent Chambers, Planning Commissioner from Ashland, and I'm on the Plan RVA Outreach Committee.
Don Root, also Town of Ashland, and I am the alternate on CTAC.
I'm Janice Scott with Plan RBA.
And you want to call on the online folks since you have them later?
It's 1 second. Mr. Burnley.
Morning, Champ Burnley. I'm on CTAC representing the Richmond Area Bicycling Association. Sorry I can't be there in person today.
Mr. Davey.
Hey, good morning. I also apologize for not being there in person. I'm on the engagement committee. I'm currently chair, and I'm with Timmons Group representing Chesterfield County.
Mr. George.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cameron George. I'm here representing the citizenry of Richmond. Sorry I couldn't be there today.
Ms. Erickson.
Hey, I'm Sarah Erickson from CTAC for Richmond.
Ms. Power.
Hi, good to see everyone. I'm Stephanie Power. I am with RVA Rapid Transit, and I'm the alternate on CTAC.
Fantastic. I think that is everybody. Or we've got a couple of staff in the back, just the two of you.
Hi, I'm Carrie. I'm with Plan RBA in the Transportation Division.
Hi, Emily Williams. I'm the grant specialist at Plan RBA.
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody. And just to finish out my intro, I guess I'm also representing City of Richmond, in addition to being currently the chair of the CTAC. So that being done, Janice, I think I'll hand it up to you for roll call.
Okay. Town of Ashland, Mr. Chambers.
Here.
Mr. Martin. Mr. Root.
Here.
Polk City County, Mr. Walton. Chesterfield County. Chair Davey.
Here.
Mr. Petrosky.
Here.
Mr. Plymale. Mr. Richwine. Ms. Schneider.
Here.
Mr. Ada.
Here.
Ms. Phelan. Clay County, Mr. Basham. Hanover County, Mr. Rasnick. Mr. Ledbetter. Mr. Waddell. Henrico County, Mr. Dixon. Mr. Bast. Mr. Weave. Newcastle County, Ms. Guthrie. Mr. Hathaway.
Here.
City of Richmond, Chair Bunn.
Here.
Ms. Erickson.
Here.
Mr. George.
Virtually present.
Mr. Brackman? Mr. Smith? Okay, Chamber RVA, Mr. Easter.
Here.
Area Cycling Association, sorry, Mr. Burnley,
There virtually.
Mr. Hamilton. Span Center, Mr. Williams. DCU, Mr. Leonard,
Present.
Mr. Cole. League of Women Voters, Ms. Weisinger.
Here.
Mr. Rosenblum, Ms. Rosenblum. Equitable Transit and Mobility, Ms. Rowan. Mr. Moore. BCN, Ms. Higgins. Mr. Hankins. RVA Rapid Transit, Ms. Walker. Ms. Power.
Here.
NAACP, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Willis. And Virginians for High Speed Rail, Mr. Testerman.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, hello, Mr. Wydell.
Good morning. Born late, been regressing ever since, and my apologies. I had it for 11:30,
Yes.
so this is the earliest I've ever been late.
Mr. Moore, I have you as president as well.
Thank you.
Fantastic. So before we move on, I know a couple of people came in during that. Would love to hear, I think from the three of you, just which board you're here for and who you represent on that board.
Good morning, Charlie Waddell, Hanover County. And I serve also as a representative on Plan RVA, and I've got a varied background, but we don't have that much time. Thank you.
Yourself?
Ernest Moore, Office of Equitable Transit from the City of Richmond. On the Equity Committee and team player here.
Wonderful. And I think it was.
I'm John Easter with Chamber RVA. Sorry, I left my glasses in my car, so I had to go back down and get them.
No worries at all.
On CTAC.
No problem at all. Thank you, everybody, again for being here. We can move on to the administration portion. Are there any amendments to the agenda proposed? Seeing none, is there anybody here for public comments? I don't see anybody in the back. Is anybody registered online? Okay, no public comments now. And then the chair's report, honestly, I'm just very excited for this meeting, especially item number 3. It's something that I've been part of the group that worked very hard on presenting that to this joint meeting. So I'm just looking forward to hearing that presented and hearing everybody's reaction to it. So nothing else from me, in which case I can pass it off to Martha.
Okay, great, thank you. John, I feel like I should have asked you to give this first part of this presentation, but I won't put you on the spot. I think many of you have had the chance to hear about the work that Plan RVA is doing in partnership with Chamber RVA. And our community foundation here in the Richmond region, and our United Way here in the Richmond region, and our Richmond Memorial Health Foundation. So I don't want to take up a lot of your time. We had a presentation about RVA Rising at our joint annual meeting in December, but not all of you were able to attend that day. And so I wanted to be able to brief you on that and then share a little bit more information about how Plan RVA's work, and by extension of that, the connection to the RR2PO fits into this really exciting initiative. So just by way of a little bit of history, those of you that have been around the region for a while know that Plan RVA, or the Richmond Regional Planning District Commission, and Chamber RVA have for decades now been partners in helping to move the region forward from a multi-sector perspective in bringing business and government together. Probably about 10 or 15 years ago, philanthropy joined that effort in the Community Foundation's representation. And since 2020, our 3 organizations have been working to determine what the right way for the way that our respective organizations show up in this community, how we convene our stakeholders and members, and how our community is evolving, how we could work more collaboratively together to sing from the same key of music in some regards and be able to really harness the power of what it would mean to have a multi-sector, cross-regional approach to moving the region forward. So fast forward from 2020 to 2024, and we had a couple of exciting developments to happen in that time. The United Way joined our team in this collaborative effort, as did the Richmond Memorial Health Foundation. We adopted a name of this initiative. I think for a long time we were calling it the Regional Initiative, which didn't feel very pizzazzy. And so RVA Rising is the name and kind of the brand wraparound that we've identified to describe this work that we are trying to do together. And you'll see that show up in the slides that I show you. We also have undertaken a couple of other kind of key activities that I'll talk about in the next couple of slides. But essentially, RVA Rising is this attempt to bring the sectors together across the geography of the whole of the Richmond region footprint that you see here on the map to move the region forward with economic mobility as the kind of guiding compass or guiding objective of what we seek to accomplish together. And so what is RVA Rising? It is this long-term collaborative effort to bring our community together so that we all have an opportunity to thrive. We're focused on driving that activity by data and community input, and the idea that we can bring people and institutions together to leverage their collective activities and resources to move the community forward. Again, with this idea that economic mobility is something that we are striving to achieve for everybody across the region. So I mentioned a little bit of some highlights. We've been working as a loose coalition, I'll call it, where we've dedicated staff resources in a more formal way in calendar year 2024, but certainly even before that, to really be able to work on what it would look like for our organizations to cooperatively work together. We had the chance over the course of calendar 2024 to participate in a cohort model supported by the Urban Institute to really focus on what it means to set economic mobility as a target and what the performance measures look like for that. So how do we know if we're making progress in that area and when we've achieved economic mobility? And our staff members from each of those partnering organizations have been on a year-long journey with communities, I think about 15 across the country, as well as the technical resources from the Urban Institute to help think through a theory of change model of where we are today and where we want to go as a community to be able to achieve this and how we measure it. In addition to that cohort, our chamber has led with Greater Richmond Partnership, a cohort participation in the Regional Growth Innovation Network. That's supported by Brookings Institute, and we're actually, as a region, hosting the visiting delegation from that set of peer cities in May, I believe. Is that right? Does that sound right? And so all of those communities will be actually culminating their end of that year-long peer learning process here in Richmond to be able to see a little bit more about what we have going on the ground, and then also hear from partners about the work that we've been doing.
Did you say that was with GRP?
The chamber and the GRP partnered together on that application. So they're the co-leads on the cohort to be a part of that. So Jen Wakefield and Brian Anderson have been the CEOs that have been leading the effort, but Mike Ivy has been the staff member participating on GRP side with Christina Mastriani mostly, and Brittany Seward on chamber side. Yeah. Tell her I told her to check in on her.
Okay, thanks.
Also, the Community Foundation was able to sign up for a peer learning program called CF Leads, and it's a cohort model again with community foundations across the country. The really cool thing about this is that through these three kind of peer learning cohort models, there's an overlap of something like 9 metro areas, including Richmond, that are participating in all 3 of them. So we've really been able to see, I'll say candidly, how consistently their anchor organizations that are participating in each of these things are talking with one another. And to be a little bit boastful for a second, it's very clear to me that not all metro cities, metro areas that are participating across these programs are talking to each other. So if a chamber's leading in the RGIN and the community foundation's leading in the CF leads and say an economic development or a planning district commission is leading in the Urban Institute, we're like, oh, we're in this other program with your city, and they have no idea what we're talking about. So it's kind of cool that we've really locked step as institutions here in the Richmond region, where we are actually talking about each other and bringing learnings back from these peer learning groups and really trying to connect the dots and cross-pollinate across the sectors that we are engaged in.
A lot of these conversations are coming up in the cohort that we just started, that we were accepted for NACO also. But they're looking at the economic mobility in regards to bringing more affordable housing units to their locality, but I mean, and they're using Urban Institute, some of their data and stuff like that as well. So, yeah, I think everybody needs to start just talking together. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, and what we're finding is that at least for the Brookings Institute opportunity that Chamber and GRP are leading our involvement in, and in the Urban Institute, which United Way has been leading our involvement in, both of those cohort programs were funded through Urban Institute and Brookings by the same set of national funders. So it stands to reason, I don't know the specifics of how the NACO opportunity is supported, but it stands to reason that at the national syndicator level, this is all being driven by the same body of research, which is really exciting because it helps to really coalesce and make sure that we're aligning. But if we're not talking to each other at the local level, then the grab or the stickiness of it just doesn't have as much opportunity. We've also been working over the last year under the leadership of Dr. Sarah Natakari on our team and Addie Alexander and Elizabeth Greenwell, working on how to identify housing and key demographic metrics that can help support the framework that we have with Urban Institute. We've also been doing a lot of community engagement. And so this is an out of date slide, but it counts for the whole of the 2024 calendar year. At this stage, now that we're in April, we've achieved more than 75 focus groups, but those focus groups have led to touch points with over 1,000 people over the course of 2024. And I will say that these numbers don't actually reflect some of our December engagement that we're out. So we initiated out in our more rural communities, spreading the footprint of Plan RVA. We also, as I mentioned, have adopted this brand identity and the naming with RVA Rising, and a website was launched that we scheduled to happen, and that is now active. So if you search for rvarising.org, you'll be able to see the web presence there and some of this content in a little bit of a fresh format. So this Urban Institute framework for economic mobility really looks at 5 key drivers of mobility. And I won't bore you with reading each one of these sections, but I think it starts to demonstrate, probably not a surprise when we think about the opportunity for success in a community. If you think about other initiatives where we're thinking about the health of a community, it's not surprising that these are the kind of ingredients, if you will, that could help drive mobility. The 5 bucket areas are what they call pillars in the framework. And then those bulleted items underneath are the beginnings of what Urban Institute has proposed can be the drivers or indicators, actual measures. And each of these are grounded in statistical data that are available for any community across the country. And so the really exciting part about this is a lot of times when these kind of national programs roll out, it's done for a major metro area, and you try to replicate it at a community, of our size, or even at maybe like the town of Ashland size, and you find out that the data literally do not exist for comparison purposes. I think one of the things that we really found to be credible with the Urban Institute model is that they took care to make sure that all of the data indicators are available at every level of geography for communities across the country. And so if you want to look at these measures on the Urban Institute framework for your town, you can do that for your county or for the metro area. And so that's really exciting. And Saren's team here at Plan RVA has been working to build our own data metrics dashboard that's reflective of these indicators, but also goes beyond that as we start to build out what our coalitions could look like here in the Richmond region to really make sure that we're tracking and measuring the data points that matter most in our communities. So I'll zoom in for a second on that opportunity rich and inclusive neighborhoods pillar. Plan RVA and the RRTPO certainly have touch points in those other pillars, but we've really been focusing over this last year in how we can start to build out what the infrastructure could look like to bring our communities across sectors again and our various partners together to look more intentionally at moving those key metrics forward. So I hope you start to see that the work that the TPO does around transportation access is a critical piece of that. And that doesn't just serve, our residents' experience in their neighborhoods, but it also starts to connect over to those other pillars. Transportation is how people get to work. It's how they get to education. It's how they get to medical and healthcare appointments. I mean, this is stuff that you all already know because this is the work that you do, but it really starts to be that. And the principles behind this framework is not that these are individual siloed areas of activity, but they're interconnected experiences that our residents have. And so we want to make sure that we're thinking about everything in a system, kind of an integrated system perspective. So in 2025, our 5 core organizations have been working to solidify a leadership and governance structure. Most likely, that will look like the formation of a memorandum of agreement or understanding among the 5 so a 5-party agreement. And we're working on penning that agreement now for draft form so that it can come to each of our respective governing bodies over the next few months with a target goal of adopting that agreement by September, I'll say. After that formalization of that agreement that essentially says, yep, we're in and we're going to be a part of this initiative for the long haul, we'll then start to build a governance structure that brings leadership from our respective governing bodies to the table to form, I'll call it like an advisory or leadership council. Right now, the work has largely been done at the staff level, and we feel like we're ready to bring it to more of the community leadership level. That's one piece of the puzzle, but we certainly want to make sure that there's an advisory strategic group that's helping to guide this effort. And then also to start to build out the more formalized structures that we need to have to make sure that community engagement and data resources and those types of things are brought into the fold. Over the framework, over the next year, then we also want to build out what the structure looks like in those pillar areas. So again, going back to these pillars, we want to start to identify who's going to lead in this space. And this is complicated because there are a lot of actors. And so it's really about forming a coalition and starting to build an accountability structure where we can start to identify who's rowing in the same direction and how do we start to measure the collective impact of that work, as opposed to everyone feeling like they're kind of out there in their own boat and they're all trying to navigate, choppy waters by themselves. If we can get it all in a bigger boat and we can row in the same direction, we might be able to make progress a little bit faster, right? And then finally, this is an ongoing effort that's really the underpinning it on it. And unlike other initiatives that have come in the past, we've learned a lot of lessons. And so we want to make sure that while there needs to be this institutional, organizational leadership model, we also need to have a much more bottom-up approach to this. And so the commitment that we've made as organizations, and I think you'll even hear about this more in the presentations that we've put together for your meeting today. Our focus as an organization at Plan RVA and the TPO is that community planning happens best when more people are involved in the process. I think it would be unrealistic for us to say when all people are involved, but I mean, that's what we're really striving to do, is create that opportunity for everyone who cares to, has a voice in where this community is headed and how we get there. And that, I think, value set is very much aligned with our partner organizations in thinking about how we make sure that the importance and the contributions of community input really drive this initiative, and it isn't the other way around. And so there's a lot of communication that has to be built. We're really fortunate to have West Cary Group, a local marketing communications firm that has been helping us think about the messaging and to be able to design a cadence of communication over the next year that can really help to make sure that we're hitting the right notes on that strategy. So from a structural perspective, I talked a little bit about the formulation of this governance or leadership committee. This is all kind of in a more fluid draft form, but essentially, this is how we've been thinking about organizing our work. At Plan RVA, we've got staff members that are going to start to show up in these pieces. We are leading the data effort. So we'll be formulating in 2025 a data coalition where we'll be gathering partners together who have access to various data sets, but also have the ability to kind of interpret and analyze that to be able to help us think about what those metrics development need to look like. The Community Foundation with their consultant partner in West Cary Group is leading the marketing and communications effort just to kind of personalize it. Holly from our team, I think you just got the invite email this morning, maybe. Holly is going to be sitting on that committee, and I know Kristen's going to also be probably involved in that work. From a policy and strategy team, John, I hate to break it to you, but my sense is probably you're going to be playing a big role in the policy piece of this, since you do that work for Chamber RVA. But Community Foundation and United Way are going to really be driving that coalition. And then from a community engagement perspective, all of our organizations are starting to think about how we can bring the resources and assets and the networks that we convene into this effort. So a big reason why I wanted to talk about this with you today is just to give you a sign of probably where some things are coming. And then we've really been doubling down, I'll say, on the opportunity-rich and inclusive neighborhoods pillar by naming Partnership for Housing Affordability as the anchor of that work. Particularly for, again, those metrics that we've identified preliminarily here around housing stability. And then, of course, the TPO is going to be the partner in that when we think about transportation access. So diving into that a little bit deeper, as I mentioned, Plan RVA and the TPO are going to be the lead partners in the transportation space, Partnership for Housing Affordability on the housing part of that pillar. And we're formulating kind of what that structure looks like, recognizing that these organizations already have boards and committees and that kind of thing. So we really want to lean into the existing infrastructure that we have within our organizations. The chamber is leading the formation of the coalition, the convening of the coalition for the actors around workforce. And so they have already taken the opportunity to lean into and align with existing Workforce Coalition RVA. And the work that our management roundtable, that's the group of CEOs and executives from around the corporate sector that have been providing loaned executive support to help be able to think about critical issues and really be able to get that sort of high level business sector involvement. And then finally, there's going to be some, I think, ongoing discussions about how we can convene the actors in the education space. I mean, you can imagine everything from if you think about even pre-K, K-12, and then secondary education and post-secondary education, it's a complicated system or system of systems, I should say. And so we're looking forward to thinking through how we can start to bring those groups together. And then the Richmond Memorial Health Foundation for the last year or so has been the lead actor in convening our health safety net providers, as well as the other hospital system providers and our community support services in the health space, inclusive of mental health, to be able to think about what that healthy environment and access to healthcare set of strategies can look like. So all of that's happening at one time. And so I just wanted to kind of share that high level and take a pause for a second to answer any kind of questions or get some feedback. Some of you that are closer to this work and have heard it before might want to chime in to share a little bit more too, but wanted to share that grounding so that when I talk about Plan RVA's pathways to the future, it'll hopefully start to kind of lock in and click in as to how all these pieces start to fit together for us.
I do have a question.
I knew you would.
I hate to disappoint. Thank you. Very interesting presentation and my hand hurts from taking all the notes, but one high point, you mentioned identify financial resources. What percentage would be from federal, from state, and from local, and how robust do you anticipate those financial sources would be?
So right now, the Community Foundation we've been very grateful that they have been financing the bulk of this work on this activity. And so there are dollars allocated in their calendar. They operate on a calendar year budget. There are dollars allocated in their current budget for this initiative, and they are planning to continue that investment into the calendar 2026 fiscal year. We have been talking with private foundations in support of this work. We've also been talking with local governments, not about new money, but what are they already doing that is in alignment with this? A big part of this work isn't necessarily standing up a whole new infrastructure. It's really around how do we better articulate the things that we're doing in alignment with this so that we can get more synergy. And so we've had meetings with 7 of the 9 local government administrators, and in many cases, their leadership teams, to start mapping what local government is already doing that connects to this, and how can we help raise awareness of that, and help, particularly if there are projects happening locally that could be brought to a bigger scale. What's the need to be able to do that? Is it an awareness issue? Is it an investment issue? And so that will need to come in the future. And my hope is that that can help start to drive our grant writing strategy and our seeking of future funds when we think about what implementation looks like.
Economies of scale for
Yeah,
cross region, across.
that's right.
What does the federal government efficiency review possibly affect any of the funding sources?
I mean, sure, yeah, and I think at this point in time, it's too soon to tell whether that's opportunity or it's not. I think a big part of this is really around galvanizing this region around what's important and how to make sure that we're driving kind of in a strategic way. In many instances, I think we've seen through previous federal administrations that when regions can articulate what it is they're trying to do and how they're trying to get there, that makes a great case to federal agencies for how to be competitive in grant applications and things like that. I think that there are pieces of this initiative that, candidly by coincidence, because we were formulating these things prior to the current administration being in place, but there's some overlap and symmetry there where we want to see, efficient use of resources. We want to see this opportunity to be able to really drive economic prosperity and economic mobility. And so we want to lean into where it aligns. We also want to take advantage of, this is a regionally and locally driven initiative, not a response to the federal government. And so the ability to leverage private dollars is going to be really important in this.
So our successes, can we expect with our successes to breed more success?
That's the idea.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Of course, yeah.
Can I
Yeah,
just add a
of
little
course.
bit for the chamber? We have been especially active in the rewarding work area, our workforce development area. And that's one actually where I personally have been involved, where the broader stuff, Brian Anderson has been handling, and Christina. But as was mentioned, it's really working through a coalition, the existing Workforce Coalition, RBA, which has been sort of led by the Community Foundation and CCWA, which is a partnership of the 2 community colleges, Brightpoint and Reynolds, and the Workforce Development Board, and the Office of Community Wealth Building within the city. So that's an existing organization, and the chamber agreed to come on and sort of the backbone organization, not to run that whole effort, but provide staff support for that. And so we are in the process of doing the outreach on it. We're not quite as far along as the pillar that is being worked on by Plan RDA, but we're probably at the next of the 5 pillars, the next farthest along. And one of the things we're trying to do, that coalition, existing coalition, has been working within, primarily within the post-secondary stuff. So I mentioned the community colleges, they have played a key role. But about a year ago, I've been pushing for this a long time, but about a year ago, we decided to broaden and try and do outreach as well to the K-12 school system. And so right now, we are really working with trying to get them involved. One of the problems that business has, let's say you have an IT company, is each community college wants you to be on an advisory committee about what the needs are for your workforce. Each of 8 school systems in the region want you to be on an advisory committee to do the same thing. then they want you to come into the schools and speak to each of them. And so trying to figure out, as Martha was saying, how to do this on a regional level is a lot of what this is about. And in terms of funding, the Brookings Institute, which was mentioned, has provided a lot of the kind of structure for us in the workforce for programs that have been successful around the country and trying to bring those together. So we are trying to take advantage of their thinking on that as we go forward, as opposed to just trying to reinvent the wheel. So I didn't want to take too long, but at least explain to you a little bit of kind of what's going on in the workforce context under the broader aspects that Martha talked about.
Thank you. Great. Questions? Can I just more of a comment building on the comments that have been made. I really like the branding. Some of this is a little bit hard to sort of explain to people what it's about, and talking about RVA Rising and this is the mission. I do think a key piece of what we're touching on here is how much this is about coordinating to get more value out of what we're already doing. And when you think about sort of messaging to people, why should more people get involved? Why do we think this is a good long-term thing to do? There's a I don't know exactly what the marketing phrases are, but there's like more power because we're using data and really coordinating the work for the benefit of people in the community. And I think, we can try to figure out how to incorporate that in as well, or lean on part of the messaging, because it is important that it's not a new funding source, new effort. It's let's take all these organizations and make sure we're using the best data and making the best steps, coordinating with each other to work. Efficiency. And that makes it sound even that much more powerful and exciting.
So if I can,
Of course.
thank you for that, because I think it's a great segue to the next part of what I wanted to share with you. And this is the handout that I just carried around, but I'll, for benefit of those that are online, we'll make sure that this is posted, but this is a shareable version on the virtual side of things. And I will be quick because some of you that sit on the commission will be hearing a presentation about this next Thursday, but repetition's good, right? So kind of tying that together, this idea that it's taking what's already happening and being able to create that kind of messaging wraparound to be able to talk about how the pieces fit together has been a big part of what we've been working on the last year. And so with Plan RVA's core deliverables, we've rebranded, renamed Pathways to the Future. So as Plan RVA moves forward as a key partner in the RVA Rising initiative, we've wanted to really take care that the planning products that we develop in transportation, in natural resources, in economic development, in climate pollution reduction, and in hazard mitigation, those 5 core planning products of our agency are aligned. And so one of the things that we've attempted to do is to really take this past 11 or 12 month period and start to think about, okay, we've got a set of obligations and responsibilities that the Virginia Code has imposed upon us, bestowed upon us. And one of those is to prepare a regional strategic plan. It doesn't say what the format of that plan needs to be. It doesn't say what it must include, but it says what it can include. And it's many of those things that I just mentioned. It also says that we have an opportunity or an invitation from the legislature to work with our partnering organizations. So we saw this RVA Rising initiative as a great way to meet our mandated requirement, but also to do it in a little bit of a different way so that we don't operate in a vacuum on planning activities and then say over here we're partnering, but over here we're going to just do what we've always done. And so Pathways to the Future is our recognition of that, kind of a nod to that. And so we hosted our symposium last month. Some of you were able to attend that and hear a little bit about that. Next Thursday, the board will hear a similar presentation, kind of a hybrid between what has been presented at some previous meetings and events about Pathways to the Future. But all of that in preparation for the commission, Plan RVA, the Regional Planning District Commission, will be asked to entertain a requested action to adopt this document on their June 12th meeting, which sets the vision for the region. So if our coalition in RVA Rising is focused on economic mobility, this starts to be able to say, okay, how are we going to achieve that through the core planning products that Plan RVA is responsible for? And this is the set of themes that we want to make sure that each of those plans achieve. As you all know, we're in the middle of our long-range transportation planning update. And so the idea is that becomes the operational plan for transportation in the region to achieve this vision in alignment with RVA Rising focus on economic mobility. So you can start to see how these things ladder up versus previously, maybe we were kind of just all over the place doing these different things. I think the potential for the TPO and the commission is that these products become baked in to how the sectors work together. It's not just a local government plan for how we achieve our transportation goals, but it can become a whole community plan for how we do that. And it starts to really be able to hopefully get more leverage out of those activities and efforts. And I can't tell you how many times in the last decade I've been in conversations across sectors where somebody said, if only there was an organization that brought the local governments together to talk about the most important issues in the region. And I'm like, hi. And so this is in part helping us get the word out about who we are and what we do, but I think it's also about really being able to think about who plays best sector by sector in these different areas and who can help move the needle and drive action. Where do we need to lead? Where do we need to support? And how do we start doing that in a more coordinated and effective way? So I won't read through this entire document with you, but I wanted to sort of be able to tee this up as we head into other parts of our agenda. Because for us, this has been a big part of our organizational strategy building over the last year. And I think that there's a huge opportunity for both our public engagement and outreach committee on the commission side and the CTAC on the transportation side to really help us think through from a partners, stakeholder engagement perspective, how to articulate how these pieces start to fit together. And particularly with the place that we are right now with the adoption, the anticipated adoption next year of the long-range transportation plan, you know, really being able to communicate why that is so important and how it really does have impact on the direction that our community is going. So again, I'll pause. I know we're probably needing to move on, but I thought I hope it's a little bit helpful as we move into some other parts of the reports we have today.
That's very good context. Yeah, I actually did have a super quick thing to mention to you, Martha and John. Again, really quick, because I think we do need to move on to the next thing. But last year I went to Germany, to the Stuttgart region with VCU to study regional planning, especially from like an economic development perspective. And Stuttgart is very, very good at that. There's some of the best in Germany at it. And I'm surprised and very pleased by how similar a lot of this material is to what we saw in Stuttgart, and then came back and spoke with Plan RVA and other regional entities and found that this type of vision was not quite there. And so I'm very excited about this. One of the things that we saw in Stuttgart that we felt the Richmond region lacked a little bit was a clear regional identity, especially around economy and industry, and then like geographic identity. And I'm curious if there's been discussion in these, and it sounds like there has a little bit, but I'm curious how you would like summarize it about what that economic identity is. For example, in Stuttgart, they're very focused on the auto industry, highly specialized. And I think the Richmond region has a little bit more going on. So I'm curious if there's been discussion about that, focusing that identity and making it very easy to say the Richmond region is like this. Or if it's been more general up to this point.
So geography and economic identity are probably not as well defined and formed as what you're describing you experience in Germany. Probably we all can think of reasons why that is. What I will say is that the Greater Richmond Partnership 2 weeks ago did the public release and launch of the target industry analysis. And so, you know, in your comparison with, you know, we're about the auto industry here. I think that GRP's effort to really coalesce now recognizing that their service or area is 4 jurisdictions, not the 9 that we represent. And so geographically, there's some variation already, but at least for the 4 member jurisdictions of GRP, there's a really strong consensus around what the economic drivers and opportunities are. And I know Tim is on the call here who can speak really credibly to that. We also have some really cool opportunities outside of it and beyond that footprint with some of the coalitions that have been built around advanced pharmaceuticals. And John, I mean, there's people in the room and on this committee that can speak even more to that, but we've got some really kind of cool things that when we look at our geography zoomed in, we've got some really clear opportunities and focus. And then when we zoom out, we've got some other really interesting kind of leverage that we can pull through that. So I think we're trying to lean into both and think about this geography in its core right now is the 9 localities that Plan RVA's footprint represents, along with Chamber RVA. We have the same footprint. But we also recognize that the United Way dips down into the Tri-Cities, which economically is tied to us. And so we haven't yet had a lot of deep conversation with the jurisdictions in the Tri-Cities area, but certainly some of the actors and players in that area are interested in what we're doing. And we've been keeping the Crater Planning District Commission apprised of that. So it's not a great answer. I mean, I think you're right, but I think for a lot of legitimate reasons here, there's never going to be one targeted industry and one geography because it's just not how our region functions.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's great context to have. Thank you very much. And I'm sorry it was kind of a vague question. It's just something I think about a lot since that trip.
Absolutely.
Let me just mention if Mark.
Yeah, please do.
Referred to this. I mean, it seems like whenever somebody says, what are our key industries, what you hear about are IT, healthcare, skilled trades, construction, and interestingly, transportation and logistics as being kind of really key for our area. And of course, advanced pharma is there. And, we're talking about focusing on those within the Workforce Coalition. Workforce Development Board focuses on that. I think the report that she already referred to focuses on those same industries. So if you're looking for, the top 3 or 4 where we have needs, because we have a lot going on, those are.
Yeah.
But we did pull logistics out of our GRP plan because it's something that isn't automatic and we don't have to focus on it because it happens no matter what in our district or in our area. So I think that was something that was pulled out of it.
And I would actually say on the workforce, when we talk about, look, we can't boil the ocean, which should we focus on? Usually that's not the first one of those 4 that we talk about. So we're in agreement.
Great. All right. I think we're gonna move on. Thank you so much, Martha. That's really interesting to hear about. And I believe Holly, you're up next.
Yes, so Kristen is going to actually give our presentation when she gets back, but I can hear.
It's right there.
Oh, sorry, I thought you walked away. Well, so you have a handout, I think, of our public engagement activities. And this is a report we typically share with the Public Outreach Committee about where have we been. So it's a little bit of, let's give you an idea of what we've been doing, what kind of outreach we're doing, where are we showing up in the community, where are we showing up to give presentations, where are we learning as professionals, where are we showing up to present as professionals, and then also what are the actual engagements that we're doing for whatever is open. So the first page is the really kind of general, not specific to a plan, just so that we can ensure that we're getting our name out and building relationships. And then the last few pages, 3 through 6, are actually about the long-range transportation plan, since that's our largest active engagement. So it's showing you a little bit of a cross-section of who we've had engagements with in person, when they were, how many people were engaged, and what locality was being served. And what was actually a little bit of a surprise to us is that even when we were thinking about targeting a locality, oftentimes the group we were meeting with or the audience we were meeting with was really representing a regional audience. It wasn't all just Ashland or all just Goochland. It was a regional audience because we do operate very regionally, which was nice to see. So that is just kind of giving you a idea of where we've been. Some of the things that are in progress may not actually turn into booking. So that's just kind of letting you know we're in relationships with some of those folks. And so what's pleasing about this, and Kristen's going to talk about this in a minute, is just to see like how many things we've touched in such a short time. And she's going to be able to talk about that in a minute. But I think it's really great to be able to put it on paper to say, like, look at the reach we're doing as a staff. And I actually think there's some things that might not even be on here. I think there's quite a lot of ways that the rest of our staff show up that is beautiful in our convening role and the way that we can be the place where people gather and talk about how successful regional cooperation is in our region, because that has not always been true, and it feels like very good momentum right now, and I want to lean into that momentum. So I'm gonna stop talking and let Kristen do her part.
I just came down here because it's easier for me to see that, and also, the clicker's down here. Well, oh, yeah, oh, goodness, now I'm really gonna talk longer than I thought. No, I haven't. Let me start it. I wanna say two things. First, that there's a QR code there on the presentation for you to be able to scan and then follow along as a public link to, so I know sometimes you might wanna linger on a slide longer than allowed by the clicker, so I wanted to allow you to do that. And then the other thing I wanna mention is that I've only included sort of the booked and the pending actual locations in my presentation. And so you want to refer, when I mention completed or booked engagement, that or completed engagement, that full list is there for you. So I'm giving people just a little bit more time to get going. Oh, this is not. Oh, there we go. I'm going to start off with some data. But that's always fun, and also it's important to lead with, to be driven by data, to respond to what data is trying to tell you, to look at it. So what Holly mentioned in the list is that we have, since we started the LRTP engagement, and I'm specifically today talking about that work, we've completed 31 different engagements. And what I'll say is that represents not meetings to set up with or conversations, although those are simultaneously happening. These are events where we were on site in the public, either at an event or a small group that was convened for our ability to do a listening session. Large events, small events. It's pretty exciting to, since November, to have that many. You can see that there are 10 others scheduled, and you'll see the list in the packet and also in the next slide. What's important about that is that you know, these numbers are constantly changing. So tomorrow, for example, is something that's booked today. So it's exciting to watch this change. And if you see previous presentations, you'll see that growth. 1,400, over 1,400 people. What I want to share with you about that is that does not mean that there were, we counted everyone in the room when we went to an engagement. This really reflects people who either we spoke to, came by and heard something. We don't count people in our engagement numbers unless we have had some sort of you know, soft or high touch with them where they've heard a presentation in the room or we've actually spoken to them. So we were among, and people saw our signs, for example, many more people than 1,400, but we're really trying not to pad this with, you know, we counted everyone in the room, even though we did not speak to everybody. The 9 in progress, that means really there are conversations happening, and of course the potential means we've identified those, but we haven't been able to move on them quite yet. You can see the public engagement where it's a community event where you could show up on our Engage platform, engage.planrv.org/LRTP. And again, only those public events are listed. And I did put a QR code to the Engage too as well in case you're interested. So this slide shows a little piece of the Engage site, but it's a listing of what is on deck. So you'll see that the dark red represents regional, and as Holly mentioned, a lot of times that can be happening, for example, in Henrico, but their reach for that event is regional. So it's not really, the way we think about it is it's not appropriate to call that a Henrico event as if it's only open to Henrico folks. So if you're looking at our list and you're saying, oh, I don't see myself, I don't see many New Kent there, that could be because we have not been able to have quite as many event engagements as we'd like. But it may also be that the provider is serving New Kent, and that we were present at their regional event. And I'm happy to entertain any questions about any of these events if you have them. But the piece on the right is really talking about the scope of the project. So when people go to the Engage site, what they see on every page is a static sort of menu item to the right is where we are in the project. So you can see the 2 top purple stars really indicate, you you know, this is the public engagement phase we're in. There are two other sort of general outreach. Will be going out in the community opportunities happening, you know, in January next year, and then again later as we go out to present the plan. But there will be formal 15-day public comment periods as well. So when people follow the project, not only can they see where we're going to be, and you all can see, you'll see sort of where we are in the project. We're wrapping up these engagements so that the team can then start analyzing the data and building them into the universe of projects at the end of this month. So if you have any other events where you're saying, we have got to have you there, our folks really would love to have input, and they really need to be speaking to someone and have someone guiding them through that process. Please let us know. I know Jessica Snyder already mentioned one, and I'm not putting any pressure on anyone. You know, Chesterfield is not the only place that has given us events. So quickly, I want to go through just, you know, we were asked to come and share a little bit about our methodology, and I think leading with like some of the hard data is really great, because I don't want you to feel like you're waiting for that. But this process, these 31 completed engagements did not happen as sort of a you know, we got a lot of calls and emails to come. Most of these are because we are doing both broad and targeted outreach. We share things on our social media, put things in the newsletter, places where anyone and everyone can have access to. Completing the survey, filling out the map activity, for example. But the targeted approach requires much more planning, intentional outreach, and really taking a look at not only the localities, but who we haven't been reaching maybe in other outreach efforts. Who is not showing up in our demographics? Do we, for example, not have anyone under the age of 18 answering our surveys? And that has happened where there is a zero number of anyone under the age of 18. And so then we would take a targeted approach to be in front of young people and set a goal for our engagements. It's important that both of those things are happening at the same time. And then lowering barriers by building an engagement infrastructure. So what are the types of things that we're bringing? Is it one mode? We have multimodal ways for people to engage. And that's important for lowering barriers. We take paper surveys, for example, everywhere we go. And you know what? Even though people have phones in their pockets, the desire to fill out the paper survey is kind of, people are old school. And we're happy for that, you know, that they can see the kinds of questions we're asking. We obviously tell them you can drag and drop. No, I'll fill it out. I think it's a sense of completion. It's also larger print because then it's accessible by all potentially. And I'll just mention quickly the grow the 45. So the 45, it's in quotes because it is not a real thing. It is a mentality around if there are 9 localities and we were at minimum to engage with 5 organizations in each locality. And we specifically looked at organizations that may not have a lot of input from. We would have 45. So that was the kind of, you got to start somewhere, right? And it's actually an equal number per locality. That current list is over 150 organizations at this point. So when we say the 45, it's kind of an idea that we started thinking that a minimum of 5. And of course, our goal is to ensure, and I know Martha said not all, but for us, we're like aiming high. It's like all our residents would have the opportunity to shape the region of the future. We do prioritize some primary strategies in these strategic pillars that we are looking to identify and engage with underrepresented and limited access groups. And that is important because just like if you had a survey and you never spoke to anyone writing who's a cyclist, you would question the data coming back and say, well, I guess cycling isn't very important, but we just never spoke to anyone who actually felt that cycling was important. So when we say underrepresented, we're looking at data and saying, you know, we're not seeing folks, again, youth under the age of 18. Well, have we gone anywhere to ask any youth serving organizations or been in community events like the Teen Summit that just happened? And so we don't want our lack of data to be a reflection of our lack of planning. And then conducting and targeting and personalized outreach really speaks to coming to an organization in the way that they feel it is best for you to come to them. So personalized might mean providing a little bit of a lesson to young people about transportation and how things are planned, and then moving on to the engagement. So we're not just coming to get data from you, we're actually coming to help you learn a little bit about the career of urban planning, if that's what the organization is asking for. We might work with seniors who say, you know, we really, please do not bring something where they are only scanning these QR codes. That is not something our seniors prefer, or, you know, or we might do a little bit of a digital literacy lesson using our engagement platform as an opportunity to have those folks leave with an experience. So personalized means we're trying to show up and be ready for who we're serving. And of course, developing accessible audience specific messaging really comes from making sure that we're not using a one size fits all language bank. We change the language to make sure it is, we wouldn't necessarily bring the same language to the teen summit, for example, as we would in a presentation here. We're gonna make it something it's easier to grab onto. I'll go a little bit more quickly through these. I mean, I think we're really wanting to tell you that when we speak to it, I've mentioned this strategy, these pillars, limited access to us really means that it is not that those folks, ooh, look, are hard to serve. I said it for 10 minutes, so I would have 5-minute buffer. It's not that those people are hard to serve. It's that we may not have built the relationships or the pathway to be invited. And so that's part of our charge, is to make sure that we understand that we may have limited access to groups, but they're functioning and doing their daily living and all those things. And how are we able to be invited or included, and then make sure that we are able to pull on a resource there to say, oh, we'd like you to help us do some future engagement, that we're not just going one and done. Face-to-face is critical. So like I said, the 31 and the 10 scheduled and the 9 others potential, those are face-to-face. It's pretty rare that we're doing a virtual engagement, although we can come. I'm making a video for an organization because it would be easier for them to me to make a video that they present than to maybe have someone coming into a meeting. I'm fairly sure that will result in an additional meeting, but I'm happy to make a video. But face-to-face, pressing the flesh, all those things, people really want to talk to you and see and feel like you're a real person. Planning is so hidden behind the scenes. And we do go to existing gatherings. So we might be at the Nutsy, fun day, where 6,000 people, I think they said, were coming, or the Goochland Day, where any number of like age and groups are coming. We also want to be face-to-face in those smaller groups. I mentioned a little bit about our personalized engagements and the audience specific messaging. Again, we are, we have very many versions of the outreach materials that we create, and we customize them almost regularly. I'm going to end with just back to some data. So the Engage platform data, this is our usage, the data visualized. So you can see those spikes really coincide with the beginning of the LRTP engagement. We had done just one engagement with the rural transit. So you'll see some things before that period where we started October, November. But you can see that it has these big peaks and spikes, and a lot of that corresponds to when we're out in the community. We can put things out on social media. That is not necessarily the driver for people actually completing a survey or dropping it in. It is important to do those things, and we're hoping to expand that reach as well. I'll just say that we had a meeting with Social Pinpoint, that's the platform company, and they let us know, and we had sort of already looked at some data around our engagement, but our engagement on the site is at almost upwards of 50% engagement, and the industry standard is around 2 to 12%. So this Engage platform that we've invested in, that we have been utilizing across several projects, is actually producing some good results. It's not only just the visit, but people actually taking action once they're there. So all of that data is tracked, and you can see that people are leaning towards the map as opposed to the survey. So we're also getting some great data about how people are wanting to engage. That's something where they can be more specific, coupled with the demographic survey with some general questions is really important. Are there any questions for me?
We want to keep them super short, just so
Yes.
everybody knows, because we want to keep us on track. But
I'll do my best to keep, short is not a word they use with me much. Thank you for your presentation, very interesting. When you reach out to a group and you meet with them, how do you staff the team to go out, and what is the standard interest questions that they ask you?
So I failed to mention, I meant to do that, thank you, Mr. Waddell, that Sarah Erickson, who's on the meeting today, actually was one of a CTAC member who came with us to the Powhatan Board of Supervisors meeting for the end of February. So it is open for any CTAC members, any board members, quite honestly, to join us at an event, but typically it is either Holly or myself or a staff member may be tasked or volunteer to do an engagement. Because of capacity and really, you know, the return on investment, right? It's important not to have 2 and 3 and 4 staff persons at any one event. So it can be quite often it's one person, or it could be at larger events, 2 people at the table. You know, there were 600 youth at the teen summit. And so we had 2 people there because, you know, it was nonstop. Just those teens were very interested. I would say the general kinds of interest questions we're getting are a lot about how that Plan RVA, what is Plan RVA, that it exists, how does that work? You know, well, how do, you know, what are these plans and how is what we're saying gonna show up there? When I presented most recently about near miss, for example, it's a lot of excitement about products and things that we are bringing to the community. If you're asking specifically about transportation needs, we just had a town hall for that we partnered with the Virginia Department of Deaf and Hard of Hearing. And really there were a lot of accessibility questions because the audience there were deaf, deafblind, and hard of hearing folks. So sometimes it's dependent on that group. The youth want to say, you know, I want to be able to get to work and I don't have a car and, you know, the bus doesn't come where I live. And so there's some storytelling about their own experience more than a question. Of course, that's not something that Plan RVA is directly going to solve, but we encourage them to share those things and those thoughts. So I think once we explain how the process works and really what our role is in obtaining that information, it's less about I need this fixed or a complaint that would go to a locality. But it is about their lived experience, we find.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. We'll do one more.
I'm looking at the in progress of potential ideas list, and I note that you have Ashland Train Day down here, and my question is, how would you quantify the engagement in an event that draws typically 20,000 people?
Yeah, we have these cute little clickers. That we often use, I'm not kidding.
So if people would stop by the exhibit and.
We are only counting people that we have had either a conversation with that took something from us, and so it's our job to get people to that table. Or, you know, I've rigged up something with some suspenders and a little tray to do some walking, like sort of like cigarette curl thing. Because often a table is not really the best way to do things. So we're nimble. Again, you know, we're trying to be as transparent and honest about the outreach that we're doing. But you have a great question, and we wrestle with that all the time. Or wouldn't 6,000 be great?
Fantastic. All right, we're gonna move along because our next one is a bit longer and has some moving parts. So Henry, you or Jessica starting?
Jessica's gonna start us off.
Okay, Jessica, you're gonna start us off on the equity working group. Very exciting. Go ahead.
So some of the members here have been in the equity group that we've been, the working group that we've been in. And we've been trying to focus on ways of bringing value to the investment of time that people give to us to come to meetings like this, like the CTAC. These are all citizens that are coming here voluntarily to help us move through and gain information about the region. And even with public outreach engagement, like Holly and Kristen were just talking about. And so how do we engage with people and make it worth their while to possibly engage more consistently, as well as feel honored by their time that they're giving to us. And so we've got a couple of policies that we want to put together. I think it's important to recognize people for their time that they are investing in things. And so we have a new policy that we're looking for a motion. And Ken is going to talk a little bit more about that.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank the members of the equity work group that have helped us to develop this policy.
it just seems from all of our research that if we want to make sure that we are engaging more and more people and the right people at the right time and being respectful of people's time and their expertise, that providing some compensation is in order. And this seems to be a trend that is emerging. You know, with that, I've undertaken a research project to try to identify what are some of the best practices down to, you know, what should be the level of compensation, who should be compensated, and so forth. So we have put together a draft policy that is in your packet.
Page 6.
I'm not going to read it. I'll let you do that. But basically, what we are proposing is that we start on a pilot basis now. This is a pilot only. With the start of the new fiscal year, to compensate individuals who participate in our meetings, whether they are here or virtually. So if you're a CTAC member and you're unable or you wish to participate virtually, we would compensate you as well for your time and your input in the discussions and deliberations of our meetings. Again, this would be for a pilot basis, a trial basis, you know, assuming the availability of funds. And the other, I think, important caveat is that at the end of the trial period, we would undertake an evaluation to see what effect this is having. Obviously, one of the things that we hope it would have would be increased attendance. There are probably some people who, you know, don't show for our meetings, and I'm thinking particularly of our citizen representatives, that because maybe they have something else going on, they haven't made it a priority, but maybe that little enticement of $50 would be enough for them to show up, you know, at our meetings on a Wednesday afternoon. But we would anticipate doing an evaluation of the program to see what sort of effect it's having in terms of attendance. Also, the quality of input we're getting. Are there people that you know, we would like to engage, but perhaps they haven't been able to get here because of childcare issues, transportation issues, barriers, what have you, and that little, you know, bit of money might be enough to bring them forward. So the quality of the input that we're getting, you know, are we getting a broader perspective, which is what we need for all of our transportation plans. So again, you have the proposal in front of you. I'll also go on, Jessica, if it's okay, to the attendance policy.
Yeah, I was actually gonna say something about that.
All right, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, again, because it's so important, and you had brought it up, we are hoping to potentially increase attendance, and so there are some policy, we have a separate policy on page 8 that we are putting forward also for a motion to approve the fact that people have to, if they miss more than 2 meetings in a row, or if they miss more than 3 meetings total, we would sit down and have a talk with the locality or the organization and say, is there someone else is there, first off, an issue that you might be having in getting to the meeting? Or do we need to look to see if there's a new person that might be able to spend the time? And so it's just a policy that we're setting to set those expectations and make it again more of a professional. You know, we're here, we're wanting to invest in your expertise and your knowledge, and we want to make sure that you're getting the most out of it, and we are as well. So those are the 2 things. And I just think this group has been really awesome. I think it's just. I got chosen to talk because I am the elected person, and so I don't have any investment in any of this, and I wouldn't be getting any of it. And so for me, I just value everybody that brings their time and energy to these things. And as Stephanie says, you know, we need to meet people where they are sometimes. And so if we, you know, we need to try to encourage people to engage as much as possible. And if this helps, then that's what we want to do. So.
And if any of you are worried, the proposed policy would be in addition to the compensation you're currently receiving, which is our undying gratitude for your being here, as well as a free lunch and validation of your parking.
Yeah.
So we're not going to take away your lunch or your parking.
It's not an either or.
Right.
Oh, All right, so I guess we do need,
I just have a curiosity.
Yeah,
question,
real
'cause when
quick,
I read this.
Mr. Burnley online
Oh,
had a hand up, so I'm gonna
Sure, thank
ask
you.
what he has and then I'll.
Right.
oh,
ahead,
you're,
Chad.
you're, you're
Chad.
muted.
Unmute.
You're muted. We can't hear you.
Unmute.
There we go. Thanks. Can you hear me?
All
Yeah.
right.
Hey, Ken, I appreciate your comments. I tell you, to be honest, I have a little bit of heartburn with this. You know, if we were to take a survey around the table right now, I would guess 3/4 of the people there, or at least half, are being compensated through their employer right now, so they're getting paid for it. And quite frankly, there are a number of us on CTAC. I think about people like Michael Testerman, Lisa Guthrie, and some others. I've been coming to this for almost 25 years, and nobody pays me a nickel to do it. I participate in this because I want to see the Richmond region successful, and I want to see us grow and do the proper things. And I've had this issue before with nonprofit boards where people talk about paying people to be on the boards, and I've found where you have to pay somebody to come. They're not necessarily passionate about it. It doesn't get the quality of input on those boards that I would like to see. And again, I appreciate your perspective, but I just, and I tell you, I hear this talk on the news about town hall meetings with quote paid hooligans, and they don't look like paid hooligans to me. They're people that care about what's going on in their communities, and they're there for a reason, because they want to make a difference. And I think actually we could open ourselves up to a little bit of criticism that, oh, you got to pay people to come to it. Does that taint the input we're getting? So with all due respect, I'm not in favor of this. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Champ, your point is well taken, and that one of your point about, paying people to show up, is that a barrier or a challenge or an issue with this? So I think it's something that we have to acknowledge and be aware of as part of the process. But with that being said, I still think there is some value in compensating, and one of the things that we are proposing in this structure, if you will, is that we would have different ways of compensating individuals. In the case of our citizen reps, and let me pick on Mr. Root here, since he is the appointed rep from Ashland, we would directly compensate him for his time and efforts here, because he's coming here as an individual of his own accord. For you as a member of RABA, or for Sarah as with League of Women Voters, or Richard, we would compensate your organization. And your organization in turn would be able to decide whether they would pass that funding on to you or put it into their treasury for whatever, purposes they choose to use it. And obviously, we would also have an option for people to just opt out and say, thanks, I don't need to be paid to come. Does that address your concerns?
Well, no, I appreciate it. I've heard those arguments, and Robin doesn't need the money. I don't need the money. But again, I just I have heartburn with this.
Well, I think the fact that we want to do it on a pilot basis or a trial basis is would enable us to determine, is having the desired effect. And if it's not, then we could certainly just set it aside.
Real quick, I think you were the next with a question if you wanted to ask.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. When I read the policy in advance, I had in my head that this was more about expanding who we were hearing from, or who you guys were hearing from. And so I just wanted, it sounds like it's about, at least initially, the same invitees, but with compensation. I'd like to hear whether there's a measure or a plan to understand, could we get a different kind of community input through this process?
Yeah, that's why there's a carrot and a stick policy at the same time.
Yeah.
That the carrot is bigger than the stick, in my opinion, but there has been some chronic absenteeism.
Yeah.
And this would provide a lot of forgiveness, but would start to especially get CTAC more rejuvenated people who are active.
And of course, this is a pilot, so the intent is to assess its impact and then potentially expand it to other programs that would have more of that kind of impact that you're talking about.
Might I add also, expanding it, but sometimes it wouldn't be a monetary, it might be providing dinner or providing daycare or something like, or transportation vouchers, et cetera. Champ, I appreciate your, and I think that sometimes there are definitely some smaller organizations that participate, such as, Rapid Transit. I think they have 2 employees, I mean, and so those dollars go a long way for them to do outreach and stuff like that. So I just think that those are the ones that we need to think about as well. So just my opinion. And I had suggested maybe if you didn't want to take the money, that maybe you might donate the dollars to an organization that is worthy also. So that's always an option, so.
In the order that I saw them, Mr. Moore and then Mr. Easter.
I just wanted to add for context purposes, yes, there are some of us that are getting compensated. But the barriers for those who want to be there and not able to, this is a means by which we will help them subsidize their presence in this engagement.
And to be clear, I believe item 4C in this policy states that people who are receiving compensation as members of or government organizations are not eligible for the compensation.
Right, exactly.
So if you are being directly compensated to be here, you would not be eligible for that payment.
Right.
And then Mr. Easter.
Yeah, I frankly kind of agree with Champ. I don't particularly like this idea of compensating people. Seems to me it's an honor and privilege to be here, and if you're motivated to come do it, that's good. You all are nice enough to give us a lunch and parking. But I just don't particularly like the idea. Has there been either any anecdotal discussion with people whose attendance is a little weaker as to whether or not, has anybody heard anybody saying that might be a good incentive, I might be willing to come? Probably not. Or Ken, you mentioned that you've done some research on this. Is there evidence that this in fact works and you get better attendance from people doing this? And so I'd like to get the answer to that question. But then the other point I'd like to make is, when I read this, and I may not have read it carefully enough, I did not take from it what I think you said, Ken, which is that an organization could get the payment instead of the individual. I read this in terms of the individual and noted the exception that you wouldn't qualify as an individual if you're being paid by your organization. But I didn't read this to say the organization could be paid. Now, I may have missed it, or it may be that if we pass it, that we need to clarify that.
That's the intent of the language. Perhaps we need to clarify some.
I would say that's section 4B in the policy.
And I read that twice while we've been talking, and I still don't necessarily take it from that, but okay, we can deal with that. But how about the broader question?
The broader question about, the effectiveness of it, there's a pretty good body of literature on it. I did contact our other Virginia MPOs, and none of them at this point have such a policy in place. So we are kind of leading the way on it. I did find an MPO up in, I think it was Vermont, that is doing almost the same thing. They're in the process of drafting a policy as well. So it's a fairly new development, if you will.
When you said there's literature on it, is there literature in other contexts other than MPOs suggesting this actually works to incentivize and gets people to come?
This was within the context of transportation planning and public engagement. Yes, it was pretty specific. Some federal reports and so forth. So there's a body of literature on it.
Thank you.
Right.
Okay, real quick, I have just been informed that we have about 4 minutes to get a vote on this because of technical constraints. That would mean it's
Well,
not.
I don't know for sure that will Zoom end at its end time, or does it let you go over? The Zoom was set for an hour and a half. And it won't let me extend it on my screen. I just don't know if it's gonna end and then the members that are participating virtually will no longer.
Typically, you have the time to count that lets you go for an hour and a half. You can go longer. It
Okay,
doesn't matter.
well, if we wanna continue, what I can do, if something happens and we lose our virtual participants, I'll send out a link to a new Zoom. We'll have to regroup and start another one so that we don't cut them out at a certain point.
We'll say then that we will not vote until we
Oh.
can get the people back on.
Right.
Okay, great. In that case, yes, the super trustee.
Just had a question, understanding that it's a pilot, is there a metric for measuring whether it's successful or not?
Yeah, well, that was what.
There are some metrics that I've found, increased attendance and more diverse attendance being obvious ones. Reducing barriers to participation, that would be almost on a case by case basis to determine. Retention rates are the people that are not showing up or that we would like to engage. Broader geographic representation. The quantitative feedback we get, some of these are a little bit harder to measure than others, I acknowledge that. But there are, some basic ones that I think that certainly we can readily measure.
Certainly qualitative assessment of the feedback and participation that
Right.
we're getting could be included
Right.
in the reevaluation
Right.
of the pilot.
Right.
Yeah. Of course.
When I first heard this, I think I may have had some reservations, but one of the things that I see throughout this is community input. Now, I'm coming from New Kent. I would come whether you pay me or not, but how many other people are coming? And when we vote on a person to come from New Kent to represent New Kent, my name is submitted and the motion is closed and I'm elected because nobody else wants to come. And I think one of the reasons is the cost.
Yeah.
There are a lot of barriers.
Yes.
And we have done it at the Office of Equitable Transit and Mobility through Richmond Connect, which caused us to have great community input. And Stephanie Power has got her hand up. She may want to piggyback on this comment.
Yeah, go ahead, Stephanie.
You,
If she unmute.
She's not talking yet, so there we go.
Yep. All right. Yeah. Thank you so much. So I just want to share my perspective here. I also was on the equity working group. And like I said before, I am with RVA Rapid Transit. My main role there is community outreach. So I have the honor of sitting in rooms with other organizations who do this type of work and have really taught me a lot about what it means to really make event spaces, meeting spaces more accessible to more people and more diversity of voices. So one of the things about, and I'm still pretty new to CTAC. I think this is I'm about a year in of joining these meetings. And one thing to notice for me right away, while we do have, folks from all over the region, right? Our 9 localities, we also do have some seats at this table that either are not filled or, certain representatives from organizations, community-based organizations who haven't shown up. And I also just want to draw attention to that, the folks who come to this room, like most of us are either resourced enough to show up in the middle of a work day. And so we wouldn't need something like compensation for our time or an extra incentive. But if we're really trying to accurately represent the diversity of our population of this 9 localities, right? And I'm most familiar with the Richmond region because that's where I work and live, though I live in Henrico as well. But just knowing like the amount of, we don't even have a representative on this body who is Spanish speaking, for example, right? And how our Latinx community is just growing and growing and is expected to keep on growing. I think that's a little bit problematic when we're coming to this table trying to represent transportation needs for people, but we don't belong to those communities. And so then I would also look at race, right? So many of us, majority of us at this table are from the white race. And so I would want to see a little bit more diversity of voices. And when I think about what access does and offering small compensation again as a pilot, it really just starts to open doors. It opens just people's ability to get into the room. And especially when we know that we're coming from a space of like having to like intentionally open the doors, like we're not starting from like an equitable space when we think about power and privilege, and we think about the history of how our organizations are founded, our cities have been founded. I think it's policies like this that I really believe in, because they start to open the space to say, you know, even if you're coming from a background or you don't have as many resources, or you're not used to being in these spaces at these tables with your voice being heard, this is kind of how we rebuild trust. We open the door and just make sure that more voices can be heard. So I also know that I think there are some absent seats on CTAC presently. Am I right in that?
Yes, yes, there are.
Okay, so that's the other point, is like, okay, so how can we be strategic that we are, you know, getting voices who are underrepresented presently on this commission? And again, I think compensation is like a wonderful tool to, just to really open up this space. And again, with my work too, with RVA Rapid Transit, you know, I'm engaging with transit dependent riders, people who are making, you know, 50%, more than 50% of people who are using GRTC, they make $25,000 a year or less. So, you know, if I'm thinking about folks who are coming from those populations, when I'm doing engagement with them, and I'm now full-time at my job, that only happened last year. I was part-time, I moved full-time. But, you know, even in my own circumstance, like I started my job as a part-timer and a full-time bike rider, bus rider, because I couldn't afford a car, right? But now I have the resources, and I was afforded that privilege, afforded that ability to have more wealth in my life. I literally just got a car 2 weeks ago, right? So, you know, I can just see how it has impacted my own life, and how when I'm doing outreach with communities who have much less resource than I do now, it's really important to have some type of exchange, an energy exchange. And if we're wanting to accurately and honestly and democratically represent the voices of our region, I think that this policy is really, really important. So I'll just leave it there.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. And I wanted to say that that's a really good representation of a lot of the conversations that we in the equity working group have had over our past 4 meetings, maybe.
Yes.
So we've had several hours of conversation, and I think Stephanie did a fantastic job just then of summarizing a lot of what we were talking about. How it's not really about the people who are currently coming to every CTAC meeting. It's about the people who either are coming or who could be coming, or who we may want to come but can't for various reasons. And those are the people that this policy is more about. So I know that we has the Zoom meeting. It looks like the Zoom meeting is fine. So I guess we can not have to worry about that.
Can I just?
Yeah, of course.
So, again, with the pilot program, we are not going to implement this until the next fiscal year, so in July. And so before that, the next couple months, we're going to be sharing out information about this. Seeing if there are people that would be interested in joining in some of those area or some of those positions that have not been attending a lot, or community associations or nonprofits that would like to start attending, if they are going to be getting some, and so that gives them some time to build up on that. So before we start the program also. So.
And one last thing, one group that's missing, and we're hearing this in New Kent and Charles City, is Native Americans. We have none. And they're, to a point, asking to be involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, thank you.
I guess I'm saying this because we've been focusing a lot on consensus building in the equity working group, but Champ and John did as those who expressed some concern over it. Did y'all have further comments or question before we start talking about the vote and what that would entail?
I think I have further comments. I'm not sure I've been swayed in
Sure.
how I feel, but I don't need to anymore.
Understood.
Is there something in the chat? Stephanie just said thank you.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Well, in that case, we are going to be asking for a vote to recommend that the policy board adopt this policy. I have no doubt that after that recommendation, they would probably look at it themselves, probably modify it to tidy it up, but the votes would be for both this policy, the compensation policy, and then the attendance policy, and I believe those would have to be separate votes, correct?
Yes.
So we're gonna do a, what would you call it, a roll?
Well, we'll need a motion and a second
Yes.
for the first, the CTAC member honorarium policy.
Okay, great, so I'll be asking for a motion to recommend to the policy board the adoption of the honorarium policy.
So moved.
All right,
I'm sorry.
Second,
who
made the
said,
motion?
validated.
oh, Gonzalez, yeah. And then the second was Jessica, fantastic. All right, so hearing those, we would raise hands for it.
I'm gonna do a roll call vote. We may have, it may be a split vote, and if it's okay, I'll do the CTAC members first, so we can.
Yeah.
But keep them separate, and then I'll call the Public Outreach and Engagement Committee members.
Great.
So, Mr. Ada?
Before we start the vote, just, can I make one additional comment? Sorry. Part of the justification that was talked about was people who would really have real financial need, and this could be a factor. I wonder if for those who want to support this going forward, if people would be amenable to trying to have, before this goes to the board, some language added that kind of emphasizes that that's what the purpose is. This isn't just anybody who comes and qualifies, you know, yeah, anybody could apply for it and be eligible. But if somehow we added language saying that for those with financial need, you know, they're eligible, or something that goes to kind of the rationale for what was articulated for doing this, you know. I'm probably not gonna vote for it anyway, so if you all don't like that idea, don't worry about it, but I at least wanted to throw that idea out there.
I will say the equity working group will continue to meet, not working specifically towards this goal, but I think that that is something that we could talk about.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay,
Okay.
go ahead.
Mr. Ada?
Aye.
Chair Blunt?
Aye.
Mr. Burnley?
Nay.
Mr. Easter?
No,
Ms. Erickson?
Aye.
Mr. Hankins?
Aye.
Mr. Leonard? Do we have Mr. Leonard?
he has to go.
Okay.
I think there's alternates here. Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, I don't know if
okay,
that
correct.
changes
Mr. Cole,
anything.
can you vote?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Let me update this really quick. Okay, Mr. Moore,
Aye.
Ms. Power? Ms. Power?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Root,
In its current form, no.
Mr. Waddell,
Aye.
and Ms. Weisiger.
Aye.
Thank you. Now I'll poll the Public Outreach and Engagement Committee members. Mr. Chambers,
Aye.
Chair Davy,
He seems to have fallen. He's not on there.
Mr. George,
Aye.
Mr. Hathaway,
Aye.
Mr. Petrosky,
Aye.
and Ms. Schneider.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries for both groups.
Great. And so then we will need a motion to make the same recommendation regarding the attendance policy.
Also moved.
And I will second.
And Mr. Root.
CTAC. Mr. Ada,
Aye.
Chair Bun,
Aye.
Mr. Burnley.
Yeah, could I, point of information to the chair, could you specify exactly what the policy is and clarify that before I cast my vote? I agree with attendance, but I'd like to know specifically what we're voting on here.
We are referring to the attendance policy on page 8 of the agenda packet. Yes, it's the one that sets a number of meetings, consecutive meetings or calendar year meetings that a CTAC member can miss before the staff and chair will approach the organization or the member asking if there are barriers that need to be overcome, just asking about that
But
and
no-
potentially proposing a new member.
Understand though, but please clarify, is it 2 consecutive meetings per calendar year?
Or 3 total.
Or 3 total per calendar
Okay.
year.
Thank you. I vote aye.
One second. Okay, Mr. Easter,
Aye.
Ms. Erickson,
Aye.
Mr. Hankins,
Aye.
Mr. Cole,
Aye.
Mr. Moore,
Aye.
Ms. Power,
Aye.
Mr. Root,
Aye.
Mr. Waddell,
Aye.
and Ms. Weisiger.
Aye.
Okay, public outreach, Mr. Chambers,
Aye.
Chair Davy, did we say he left? He's
Yeah,
fine.
I haven't seen.
Okay, Mr. George,
Aye.
Mr. Hathaway,
Aye.
Mr. Petrosky,
Aye.
Ms. Schneider,
Aye.
and Mr. Waddell.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries for both groups.
You got me on two.
He sits on
Yes,
both.
you are, have you not, you are a member of both now, yes.
Schizophrenic.
All right. Well, thank you everybody very much for everyone who spoke both for and against those. It's always great to hear those perspectives, and those will be taken to the policy board for potential adoption. So let's just keep us moving. For item number 4, I'm gonna hand it to Martha. I believe we're going to push that to another meeting, and Martha's just gonna give us a quick overview / update.
This morning, we introduced at a very high level at the TPO policy board meeting, staff's approach to developing next year's work program. And a key priority area of that is safety. And so we thought that it would be good maybe to push that item for time, but also just from a timing perspective to after the UPWP is approved, and Dan Mata from our team can come and talk with the members here about how we look to enliven a discussion in the region around transportation safety to be able to lead into the March adoption of the policy board's transportation safety measures, which actually are a reduction over the statistical increase in crashes that result in severe injury or death. And so we think that that's a good topic to bring back to this body, but for time today, it didn't seem like the right thing to do.
Sure. Do you wanna carry straight through to number 5, the zero fare update?
Yeah, I just wanted to let everybody know, you probably saw coverage, and I know that there was a recent RVA rapid transit event, just raising community awareness about the potential looming expiration of the zero fare model for riders of transit around the region with GRTC. And just wanted to update folks that Plan RVA has, in partnership with GRTC, submitted a grant application to the State Department of Rail and Public Transportation. We won't know about the results of that grant until probably May or June, but the idea is that if funded, kicking off July 1, we would work with GRTC to identify a business plan to maintain funding for zero fare. The idea would be that it would move the funding for zero fare from a grant subsidy model to an earned revenue model, either by leveraging corporate philanthropy here in the Richmond region and or by launching an actual earned revenue campaign. GRTC recently has expanded their capability to, from a permission and a capability perspective, to leverage ad sales as a revenue stream for them. And so think in other cities, you see things like wrapped buses, you see digital advertising on public transit and that kind of thing. That's not been a tool as of yet that GRTC has activated. And so our hope is that we can be in partnership with them to develop that strategy. And are currently working, before we find out the results of that grant application, with GRTC to do some soft outreach in the community to partners who might be willing to help with the more looming crisis that was covered in, I think it was the Virginia Mercury yesterday. So
I can follow up with anybody who has questions offline after the meeting or what have you, but just wanted to let folks know since that's something that's hit the news and has been a topic of conversation maybe in some of your constituencies that we're working to lend a hand. And back to my earlier presentation with RVA Rising, we see Zero Fare as a critical resource in the community that helps to support that economic mobility opportunity. Stephanie so eloquently gave her personal experience with that, but we know that from the statistics around ridership, our riders are essential workers in this region and they depend on the availability of access to transit to get to work and to be able to be contributors in this community. And we think that that's a really critical part of the economic mobility conversation.
Martha, the grant application is to cover the
It's a
cost
planning
of
grant.
developing the plan, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah,
Not
it's-
to continue
Yeah,
the Zero
that's
Fare.
correct. Yeah.
Great, okay, thank you so much. Moving to agency updates, those are in the packet, so I won't read through them or anything. I was very sad that I had to miss the regional symposium, but I was wondering if Kristen or Holly, one of you would be willing to give just like 2 minutes on how that went and what that event was like. I was very excited and then I had to miss it.
Sure, we just actually this morning published a blog recap, which has all the links. If you go to planrva.org/blog, you'll find it as the latest edition and also on our socials today, a recap video. It was what I think all staff kind of said was that it was a great Friday afternoon. So it had a very welcoming community centered vibe. We had people out in front in the beginning doing a lot of networking. 2 tables stood up by organizational partners. We had our board walk, if you will, of our core programs, boards, which we will be on display later. We were sold out. We were adding people and really like up to the limit, sort of wondering, how that might affect lunch, which was fantastic. Always wanting to say yes wherever possible. The presentations were well received, but most importantly, I think the day really encouraged people to talk amongst themselves and across tables and across geographical and other kinds of potential divides. There were so many people who were new to the conversation of regional planning or regional cooperation, individual business owners, people from the faith community, people from who were from chamber members who heard about it. So it was not necessarily sort of preaching or speaking to the choir presenting. It was definitely, there were young college students there. So I think in terms of engagement, it felt like a day where we were absolutely getting some new perspectives. And a spontaneous call came from, we were sharing out in the large group asking, how can we keep this going? How can we keep a part of this conversation? And that resulted in, nearly 20 people emailing to say, I'm in, I want to keep coming too. And again, those represented individual and organizational leaders as well, and from very different localities. So I think overwhelmingly, it was a success and we look forward to building on that. Absolutely. And we want to thank our partners at the Chamber for their registration support, and also the Greater Richmond Convention Center for food and the waiving the fee, and fantastic.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but.
No, but the blog is out, so you
Yeah,
can,
definitely.
look at the resources and all the other pieces.
Wonderful. Okay, that takes us through to the member comments. We have, I think, just a tiny amount of time if anybody has something pressing they want to share. Anything they want to call out on behalf of their community or organization. Seeing a lot of subtle head shakes, so again, I was just excited about the compensation policy, seeing how it was received and getting to share that work that we did as the equity working group. So I'm excited to see that equity working group again on April 25th. I'm excited to reconvene with my friends in the CTAC on May 15th. And once again, thank you everybody so much for your time and for participating in the joint meeting. I thought it was very fun to have a whole new mix of people, and hope to see everybody again soon. Thank you.